after all the songs we heard, I'm going to start with a poem also. It's an Israeli poem, and I will read it in English, so easier for the crowd. We will honor each one with their beautiful locks and fine faces. For such brother love cannot be undone. We won't let hearts forget what time erases. Yes, this love, sanctified through their blood, will return once again to embrace us. The poem Brotherhood, Haaretz in Hebrew, written by Chaim Guri and composed by Sasha Argov, was actually Yitzhak Rabin's favorite song, so he said. And he talked about how the sense of camaraderie between the Israeli soldiers during the War of Independence in 1948 was what enabled Israel to survive and to exist. Not many people know that you have a very special personal connection to the song, and a special connection that enabled you to meet Rabin years before you started working with him. So will you share that with us?
During Israel's War of Independence in 1948, my father was a soldier under Yitzhak Rabin's command, and he was wounded very seriously, hospitalized, and when he recuperated and recovered, because he had a nice voice, he was sent to join the first entertainment troupe that entertained the Israeli soldiers during the War of Independence. And he quickly became the leader, not the leader, but because of his nice voice, he became the solo singer of many of the songs of this troupe, including that song that Rabin liked so much. So much so that when I, as head of the International Law Department in the Israeli military, first met Rabin as the Prime Minister, as the Minister of Defense. I'm talking about his previous round, not when he was the Prime Minister. And I participated in a large meeting of generals and other important people with Rabin heading it. Everyone was leaving at the end of the meeting, and he said, "Joel, you please wait." And I found myself alone with him in the conference room. And he asked me, "Well, how's your father doing? Send him my regards." He knew him both as a soldier, but also as the one who sang the song that he liked so much. And ever since, because of the importance of the things I was then doing in the army, advising on the legal aspects of war and peace, I met with him almost on a weekly basis and went with him for 5 years. So when 10 years later or more, the Oslo discussion started, I was called. I was working here in the United States in a law firm, and I was called to come to Israel and help with the Oslo Accords. I sort of became his personal agent, messenger in the Oslo discussions, the one who was supposed to keep for him everything under control so that he could approve the Oslo Accords, which otherwise might not have happened.
So Rabin, as was mentioned in the show as well, was known as a soldier, as a commander, as a very hawkish, security-wise and political hawk. Yet he was touched by poems, and he eventually decided to go to negotiate peace with the Palestinians, negotiating directly with the PLO that was illegal at the time in Israel and something that he himself opposed for many years. As someone who worked with him so closely and knew him personally, how did you see this shift come in, and how did that shift affect the negotiation that you were a major part of? Like, what messages did you get with Rabin during the negotiating that made it go forward?
So, first of all, I want to correct what you said, which is not what you invented, but it's a common mistake, I think, in Israel and in the world, to think that Rabin changed his mind in Oslo, that he was a hawk and he became suddenly a dove, and people were asking, how did it happen? What happened that caused him to change so dramatically or drastically? And as someone who worked with him years earlier, I know that there was no shift. It is just difficult for people to understand the nuances that someone like Rabin could be a security hawk, and he was really a security hawk, and at the same time a complete dove on the political or diplomatic policy horizon and the future of Israel. People tend to think that if you're a hawk on this, you must be also a hawk on that, and vice versa. If you're a dove here, you must be dove there. And he had this interesting mixture of being strong on security. In the play, you heard him saying, people call me Mr. Security, and it was true. But at the same time, someone who always thought peace. And I remember him shifting not positions, but his attention, his focus. At the beginning, he wanted to solve the future of the West Bank and Gaza with Jordan, because Israel, when he was the chief of staff, occupied the West Bank from Jordan. So for him, Jordan was the partner. But King Hussein, the Jordanian monarch, said at some point, I'm no longer representing the Palestinians, let them go with the PLO, I'm out. He then attempted to find a solution, because he was against talking with the PLO, by creating local leadership through free elections and to start talking with elected local Palestinians. And I helped him on that as well in a prior round. I helped him develop, I'm talking about years earlier, a plan for calling elections. It was in the middle of the first Intifada. Calling, I think the year was 1988 when I was 89, early 89, when I helped him develop his first political plan for the West Bank and Gaza, based on local Palestinians. But they didn't want to cooperate, didn't want to take this role, particularly because the PLO didn't let them. The PLO then declared that anyone, any local leader who would be prepared to talk with Israel will be killed. So
sounds like Hamas these days.
Right. So gradually he came to the conclusion, even though he hated the PLO, even though he didn't want to talk with the PLO, he came to the conclusion that for peace, and he wanted peace, he should go ahead and talk with them, because they hold the keys to peace.
Thank you, that's very interesting. So at this point, it's been 32 years since the Oslo Accords. that you negotiated and wrote. And looking back, how do you view that agreement today? And what do you think could have been done differently? And also referring to the show, do you think if the agreement was signed and fulfilled back then, we wouldn't have October 7th, for example?
Well, the agreement was signed and it began to be fulfilled, but it collapsed. And the reason for its collapse was because the two peoples, and I think that the two sides should share the blame equally, were not yet ready to make the kind of compromises that their leaders thought the time has come to make, but the two peoples behind them were each not going along all the way. They started going along, but as the Oslo process came closer and closer to making the most difficult decisions, which were essentially for both sides to give up the other part of Palestine that was supposed to be divided between them. So while it was good on paper, a two-state solution, divide the land, you will have your land, we will have our land, and we can live in peace. When it came to the actual performance, there were sufficiently strong oppositions on each side that were able to block the governments from going, all the way to making peace. And on the Palestinian side, it was primarily Hamas that was getting stronger and stronger until it took over Gaza from the PLO. And I believe that without Israeli assistance, Hamas will also take over the West Bank from the Palestinian Authority. And on the Israeli side, we saw Yigal Amir on the stage, and he was perhaps very extreme, but there are many other people behind him, where then and today even more so, who will not agree to divide the land because they believe that the entire land belongs to the Jews, as do the Palestinians on the other side, who believe that the entire land belongs to them. And if you listen to demonstrations, even here in the United States, what are they shouting? They are saying, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, which means we don't want Israel to exist. This is why Oslo collapsed, because of those emotions that are getting stronger and stronger.
Okay, you leave us no hope here. So what do you say now about Trump's 20 points deal or 20 points peace agreement between Israel and Gaza? Is there any hope there? Any chance for a two-state solution still?
So, I'm not a peacenik in the sense of someone who goes to demonstration and shouts, peace now, peace now. Rather than, I'm a realist, someone who looks at the reality, it straight to the eyes.
Like Robbie?
And right. And I'm trying to analyze the situation without emotions, but only with rational thinking. First of all, I'll give you the good news and the bad news, and they're intertwined. I believe in progress by catastrophe.
And here we are.
Meaning, without catastrophe, there can be no progress towards peace. It's difficult to understand unless you look back at history and see that only after the Yom Kippur War was Kissinger able to convene for the first time the Geneva Conference and bring together the former enemies that have fought so hard just weeks, months before. And the Madrid Conference was convened after the Gulf War. And Oslo occurred after the first Intifada. So before every breakthrough, there was always some sort of catastrophe. And what do we have now in Gaza? We have a catastrophe. And you see dead people, you see wounded people, I see an opportunity. Because every catastrophe, it's like reshuffling the cards. Because when things don't move forward in terms of advancing towards peace, everything is frozen. A catastrophe creates an opportunity that you need to grab. And I salute President Trump and his advisor, not my cup of tea, by a long shot, a very long shot. But I salute him because he grabbed the opportunity. He didn't take no for an answer. And he just pushed forward. So that's the good news. Well, sort of good news. But the bad news is that in the Middle East, and especially between Israelis and Palestinians, every new agreement can only go that far until it meets new opposition and gets stuck. And therefore, I'm saying what we see now is President Trump's 20-point decision and the UN's Security Council decision 4 days ago. We are now again going in the right directions after many years of doing nothing. So this is the time to rush forward before the oppositions, in the plural, have again caused this new opportunity to get stuck. But the bad news is it will get stuck. We will not see like a full peace agreement any soon now, not even our kids, hopefully our grandchildren.
I mean, I'm not even sure it's the opposition, at least in Israel and also with Gaza. It seems like the coalition.
The opposition took over. Yeah.
So we have, was mentioned here earlier, and you mentioned it as well. There were forces behind Yigal Amir back then, and those
now they're in
forces,
the government.
Now they're in the government. Just to mention, there were rabbis who gave the law of the pursuer a right to kill someone who gives the land, gives the Jewish land. Benjamin Netanyahu, for example, the Israeli prime minister, in the year of the assassination, he was going to rallies where people were holding signs of Yitzhak Rabin in SS uniforms and in kafiyas, calling him a traitor. And of course, that was also mentioned in the show. We have Itamar Ben-Gvir, who back then, a month before the assassination, managed to grab the sign from the car of Yitzhak Rabin and said, next time we'll get to Rabin himself. Just a second. So do you think Israel should have done something else 30 years ago that would have made any difference, or we were doomed then?
First of all, before I answer your question, I'll tell you a secret. I was on the list to be be assassinated. There was Rabin, I was number 5 on the list. My name was, I had 2 bodyguards, 24 hours a day protecting me against the same fate that met Rabin. So, and I'm a traitor, Oslo criminal, that maybe now they are convening a new commission to investigate who was responsible for Gaza October 7 attack, and maybe they will find me as the reason or the cause for that war.
And I'll just add for a second that these days in Israel, journalists doing their job are walking with bodyguards because of threats like that.
So, and a funny story, I once flew alone to Tunis to meet with the PLO, just me.
Yeah.
And I had bodyguards, this time PLO bodyguards protecting me in Tunis, a sole Israeli in an enemy country. Anyhow, you asked me whether there could have been something done differently during the Oslo days. I had a lot of criticism against what was done in Oslo, including things that I have done that I should have done differently. But I don't want to bother you with the details in that regard. I just go to the end result. I don't think that the two peoples, and I said it already, were ready in 1993 through 1995, when Rabin was assassinated, to do the last concession, to give up hopes and prophetic promises for the same land that two peoples claim as theirs entirely. And I go back to what I said earlier. You can do only that much at each phase on this line going from war to peace. You cannot do it in one jump. You cannot accomplish everything in 1 year or 1 decade or even 1 generation. What we should do is always keep your eyes on the ball, peace, and try to exploit every opportunity to move the process when you see that the opportunity is there, that the time is right. Just go forward.
Vered, we have about 5 minutes for questions and answers. 5 more minutes.
I just wanted to, so do you want to go through?
Yeah.
Okay, anyone has a question? Yes, please.
So where are we now?
Where are we now?
After, with October 7th. The landscape is different, literally and, politically and so forth.
We are now in at least one respect worse off than we were in 1993 when I worked on the Oslo Agreement. At that time, there were around 100,000 settlers living in the West Bank, and when I was discussing the plans, and we were focused on the initial stage, not the final status agreement in those days, but at least in my mind, as someone who understood not just words, but also what was happening on the ground, I truly believe that there was a way to redraw the green line, the border between Israel and Palestine, in a manner that would leave most of the settlers inside the Israel side of the border in return for giving the Palestine other parts of Israel and evacuating everyone else. I thought it was possible because because the numbers were manageable. Today, when you have 500,000 or 600,000 Jews living in the West Bank, scattered throughout it, not like then when most of them lived near the Green Line. And when we come to the next opportunity to make the real peace, there may be 1 million Jews living there, again, scattered throughout the area. So I see it much more difficult to do what we could do geographically then, but couldn't do because the situation was not right enough. How to solve this? I have ideas, but I need 5 hours to explain them. So I will just say to your question, where are we today? I say, where's off?
Yes, please.
Maybe in 5 seconds you can respond to this suggestion. I fully understand the obstacles you've laid out, obstacles to progress, to which one could obviously add the current Israeli leadership is a huge obstacle. That will change in time. But my question is this: to go back to your good news, the positive element that you cited, namely progress after catastrophe. I wonder if you could add one other element to that optimistic scenario, which could be the leverage provided by the enticement of Saudi joining the Abraham Accords, the Saudi condition clearly being two-state solution, or a route to a two-state solution. The Saudi enticement combined with American pressure, I wonder if that is leverage that you could add to your optimistic outlook for possible returns of progress.
Try to
Okay.
be optimistic.
I-
Jewish, huh?
I- I want to refer to the Saudi part in your question. In 1983, I was a member of the Israeli delegation that attempted to negotiate. We actually reached an agreement with Lebanon after the first Lebanon war. And Syrian forces were still deployed there. And Israel said, as it was negotiating with Lebanon, that Israel would withdraw as together in parallel to the Syrian withdrawal. But Syria was not part of it. And every time we raised this with the United States delegation that participated in those discussions, he said, oh, what about the Syrian? Because all the agreement was dependent on the Syrians going out. And they said, don't worry, we are talking with the Saudis, they will arrange for it. Again and again, we trusted the US delegation. Nothing. The Saudis can only buy their own security by bribing everyone like Qatar today. They cannot make things happen by money in the Arab world. It's not going to make a change. It's nice to have as an addition, but if you rely on the Saudi paying the Palestinians in order to do what they need to do, it's not going to happen. And as to Israel, I heard the Israeli Minister of Finance referring to the Saudis, the potential joining by them of the Abraham Accord. He said, oh, let them continue ride camels. So
Kill journalists.
that's
They're a high-tech
That's
industry.
the minister that holds Benjamin Netanyahu and his private parts.
Our
Any other
opposite.
questions? Yes, please.
Going back to the play seems to have a perspective of a through line from what happened to Rabin and where we are today. And I just wonder if you have a perspective that you would share on that.
I think it was a theatrical, I don't want to say ploy, but a technical, theatrical thing to connect what happened then to what is happening now. But in fact, if you ask the Israeli rightists, they will say Oslo is responsible because, and you heard it on the stage today, because of Oslo, that is the original sin. But for Oslo, there would have been no October 7th. But I don't see any connection. In fact, I would say, and I don't think that was your question, but it's an opportunity for me to say something that I want to tell you all. When Israel decided to go to Oslo, Israel, Rabin, Peres, and 3 other guys around them, let's say 5 people were behind Oslo. The idea was the PLO can fight Hamas better than Israel. Because when Israel fights Hamas, all the world is standing on its hind leg and saying, oh, poor Arabs. But when Arabs fight Arabs, then no one cares, and that's a fact. No one cares if Arabs fight Arabs. And they can do it, unlike Israel, without the Supreme Court and petitions against the government and human rights organizations. Rabin said it in so many words. They can do it better. And in fact, the basic deal in Oslo was Israel gets out of Gaza first, because Israel just got tired of fighting Hamas in Gaza. The PLO telling Israel, we'll get there, you don't need to fight them, we'll take care of it. That was the basic deal. And what happened in Gaza? In 2005, they lost the election. In 2007, Hamas took over Gaza from the PLO, from the Palestinian Authority. And I keep saying it, I said it today, I'll say it again. If Israel were not there in the West Bank with the IDF, Hamas would have taken the West Bank from the PLO as well. That's the reality, and that's the only connection that I see between Oslo and Gaza today, that the PLO, the Palestinian Authority, cannot alone stand against Hamas, and Hamas will win unless somehow, and I have ideas, but I said it's 5 hours, what to do.
What about what's happened in Iraq, in Syria?
Did you say Iraq and
I meant to say Syria.
Syria? So the question is about Syria what?
Well, just that he supposedly took down his arms. He's dealing with the Jewish Syrians. I mean, do you see sort of a new Arab state developing out of Syria?
Is that an opportunity, the change of in Syria?
In
is that
my-
an
In my book, yes, as I said, progress by catastrophe. There was a revolution in Syria. Assad was thrown away, a new regime. It's an opportunity. Again, Trump, I have to, again, give
He's a
you-
catastrophe.
understood it.
He's our
He's a
catastrophe.
Say it again.
He is our
He's a
catastrophe.
catastrophe, Trump himself, yes.
But in
That's an
Syria,
opportunity.
but
And he
in
wants
Syria,
hotels and a Nobel
but in
Prize.
Syria, he saw the light, and he said, "He's a nice guy. Look, he has a beard.
He's
you know,
handsome.
handsome."
Yeah.
And
Not blonde.
let's
Not blonde like his-
remove
like
the
his
sanctions
lawyers.
against him. And yes, that may be an opportunity.